The world watched with bated breath as President Donald Trump and President Vladimir Putin met in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. This wasn't just another diplomatic encounter. The relationship between the United States and Russia had been strained for years, marked by suspicion, accusations, and proxy conflicts. Trump and Putin, both known for their unpredictable styles and assertive personalities, brought an added layer of complexity to the table. The eyes of the world were on them, wondering if this meeting would further escalate tensions or offer a glimmer of hope for a more stable future. Many hoped that the two most powerful leaders on Earth could find some common ground, some way to bridge the divide and work together to address these pressing issues. The Trump-Putin meeting wasn't just about the two men themselves, it was about the future of the international order. The post-World War II global system, with the United States at its helm, was facing unprecedented challenges. The rise of China, the resurgence of Russia, and the growing dissatisfaction with the existing power structures had created a sense of flux and uncertainty. Would the United States and Russia continue on a path of confrontation, risking further instability and conflict? Or could they find a way to cooperate, to manage their differences and work together to address common threats? The legacy of the Cold War, with its ideological battles, proxy wars, and constant threat of nuclear annihilation, served as a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked rivalry. The choice of Saudi Arabia as the venue for the Trump-Putin meeting added another layer of intrigue. Saudi Arabia, a key U.S. ally and a major player in the Middle East, had been seeking to improve its own relations with Russia. This meeting provided a unique opportunity for the Saudis to play a mediating role, to facilitate dialogue between the two superpowers and advance their own strategic interests. The rise of new threats, such as the Islamic State, and the shifting priorities of global powers had created a more fluid and unpredictable environment. The selection of Riyadh as the meeting place for these two titans of global politics was a calculated move by the Saudis. It signaled their ambition to position themselves as a diplomatic power, a broker between East and West. For years, Saudi Arabia had been closely aligned with the United States, a relationship built on oil, security, and shared interests in the Middle East. However, the Saudis, under the leadership of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, had been actively seeking to diversify their alliances. They understood that the world was no longer defined by the Cold War binary, and that forging strong ties with other major powers like Russia was crucial for their own strategic autonomy. By hosting this high-stakes encounter, they were thrust into the global spotlight, their every move scrutinized and analyzed. On the surface, Saudi Arabia might have seemed like an odd choice for a meeting meant to bridge the divide between the US and Russia. After all, the Saudis were deeply embedded in the US-led security architecture in the Middle East, and their relationship with Russia was still relatively nascent. However, the Saudis presented themselves as a neutral party, an honest broker, who could facilitate dialogue between two adversaries. They argued that their unique position, their close ties to both Washington and Moscow, made them ideally suited to host such a sensitive meeting. All three countries were major oil producers, and they had a common interest in stabilizing energy markets. By emphasizing these commonalities, the Saudis hoped to create a more conducive environment for dialogue and cooperation. The timing of the meeting coincided with a period of significant upheaval in global energy markets. Oil prices were volatile, driven by geopolitical tensions and uncertainty about future supply. Both Russia and Saudi Arabia, as the world's two largest oil producers, had a vested interest in finding ways to stabilize prices and ensure market stability. The Trump administration, while promoting American energy independence, also recognized the importance of stable oil prices for the global economy. The meeting in Riyadh provided an opportunity for the three leaders to discuss energy policy coordination. For the Saudis, it was a chance to leverage their energy clout to advance their diplomatic objectives. The sight of U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin shaking hands on Saudi Arabian soil would have been unthinkable just a few years prior. The relationship between Russia and Saudi Arabia, much like the broader global landscape, had been shaped by decades of Cold War rivalries, ideological clashes, and geopolitical maneuvering. For much of the 20th century, Saudi Arabia and the Soviet Union found themselves on opposite sides of the ideological divide. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 brought about a dramatic shift in the global order. For Saudi Arabia, this new reality demanded a reassessment of its foreign policy priorities. Section 2. Beyond the Iron Curtain. The emergence of a new Russia, led by Boris Yeltsin and later Vladimir Putin, presented both challenges and opportunities for Saudi Arabia. The ideological confrontation that had defined the Soviet era had dissipated, paving the way for a more pragmatic and transactional relationship. Despite underlying tensions, the two countries began to explore areas of common interest. Energy, always a crucial factor in international relations, emerged as a potential bridge between Moscow and Riyadh. The need for cooperation on energy issues became even more apparent in the early 2000s, as China's insatiable demand for energy resources drove up oil prices. Section 3. Energy entanglements. The growing energy interdependence between Russia and Saudi Arabia laid the groundwork for a deeper, albeit often complex, relationship. In 2003, Putin made a historic visit to Riyadh, the first ever by a Russian leader, signaling a thaw in relations and a willingness to engage on multiple fronts. This nascent rapprochement was further strengthened by shared concerns over terrorism and extremism. The rise of al-Qaeda and later the Islamic State posed a direct threat to both countries, albeit in different ways. The common threat of terrorism provided an impetus for greater security cooperation between Moscow and Riyadh. Section 4. The Syrian Knot. The outbreak of the Syrian civil war in 2011 presented a major test for the evolving relationship between Russia and Saudi Arabia. Russia, a long-standing ally of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, provided crucial military support to the Syrian regime, while Saudi Arabia emerged as a major backer of the Syrian opposition, seeking Assad's ouster. The two countries found themselves on opposite sides of the conflict, their rivalry playing out on the battlefields of Syria. While both countries recognized the need for dialogue and cooperation on issues of mutual interest, their divergent geopolitical agendas and regional ambitions created significant obstacles to a truly strategic partnership. Saudi Arabia, a land of vast deserts, ancient history, and immense oil reserves, occupies a unique and strategically vital position in the world. Located at the crossroads of three continents, Asia, Africa, and Europe, it has long been a focal point of global power dynamics. Its geographic location, straddling key maritime trade routes, has made it a pivotal player on the world stage. The discovery of oil in the early 20th century transformed Saudi Arabia's fortunes and catapulted it into the ranks of the world's most influential nations. Saudi Arabia's strategic importance extends beyond its geographic location and energy reserves. As the birthplace of Islam and the custodian of its two holiest sites, Mecca and Medina, it holds immense religious significance for over 1 billion Muslims worldwide. The kingdom's location on the Arabian Gulf, a vital waterway for global energy shipments, further amplifies its strategic importance. The narrow Strait of Hormuz, situated at the mouth of the Gulf, serves as a choke point for roughly 1/3 of the world's seaborne oil traffic, making it one of the most strategically sensitive waterways on the planet. Saudi Arabia, with its powerful military and close ties to Western powers, has long played a crucial role in ensuring the security of the Gulf and the free flow of oil through the Strait of Hormuz. The geopolitical landscape of the Middle East has undergone profound transformations in recent decades, challenging Saudi Arabia's traditional dominance and forcing it to adapt to a more fluid and unpredictable environment. The rise of new threats, the shifting priorities of global powers, and the emergence of regional rivals have compelled the kingdom to reassess its strategic calculus and forge new alliances. The 2003 US-led invasion of Iraq, while initially welcomed by Saudi Arabia, had unintended consequences that reverberated across the region. Iran's growing influence in Iraq, coupled with its support for proxy groups in Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen, has alarmed the Saudis, fueling a regional power struggle that has destabilized the region. The Arab Spring uprisings of 2011, which toppled long-standing dictatorships in Tunisia, Egypt and Libya, further exacerbated regional instability and challenged Saudi Arabia's traditional approach to regional security. Navigating this complex and volatile regional landscape has required Saudi Arabia to pursue a delicate balancing act, seeking to maintain its close ties with the United States while simultaneously hedging its bets by engaging with other major powers, including Russia and China. This strategic diversification reflects a recognition that the world is no longer defined by the Cold War binary, and that forging strong ties with multiple poles of power is essential for safeguarding its interests. The Trump administration's decision to withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal in 2018 and reimpose sanctions on Tehran heightened tensions between the United States and Iran, further complicating Saudi Arabia's strategic calculus. The Biden administration's attempts to revive the Iran nuclear deal have been met with cautious optimism by Saudi Arabia, which sees a diplomatic solution as the best way to avert a major conflict in the region. However, the Saudis remain wary of Iran's regional ambitions and are seeking assurances from the United States that their security concerns will be addressed in any future agreement with Tehran. The Trump-Putin meeting in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, was a spectacle that captivated the world's attention, a high-stakes diplomatic drama played out against a backdrop of shifting global power dynamics. It was a meeting pregnant with symbolism, a testament to the evolving nature of international relations in the 21st century, where old alliances are being tested and new configurations of power are emerging. The very fact that the meeting took place, that these two leaders, often at odds on the global stage, agreed to meet in such a public forum, spoke volumes about the changing geopolitical landscape. It signaled a recognition, however reluctant, that the world could no longer be neatly divided into spheres of influence, that the challenges of the 21st century demanded dialogue even between rivals. Despite the optimistic pronouncements and photo ops, the Trump-Putin meeting did little to dispel underlying tensions. The two countries remained poles apart on issues like Syria and Ukraine, election interference, and cyber warfare. The meeting highlighted the deep divisions between the two former Cold War rivals. Their worldviews and strategic interests remained fundamentally at odds. The smiles and handshakes couldn't mask the mistrust and suspicion. The meeting exposed the limitations of personal diplomacy. While both leaders believed in striking deals through personality, some divides were too deep for a handshake and photo op. The true significance of the Trump-Putin meeting lay not in the grand pronouncements or the lack thereof, but in the subtle shifts in tone, the unspoken messages conveyed, and the potential for future engagement, however limited. It was a meeting that was as much about optics as it was about substance, about signaling intentions as it was about achieving concrete outcomes. For Putin, the meeting was an opportunity to project an image of Russia as a resurgent global power, a force to be reckoned with on the world stage. By standing shoulder to shoulder with the leader of the free world, Putin sought to convey a message of strength, of Russia's return to its rightful place among the nations that mattered. For Trump, the meeting was a chance to showcase his deal-making prowess, his ability to engage with even the toughest of adversaries. It was a way to silence his critics who accused him of being too cozy with Putin, of being played by a more experienced and cunning operator. The Trump-Putin meeting in Riyadh, much like the geopolitical landscape it sought to navigate, was a complex and multifaceted event, open to multiple interpretations and subject to the vagaries of history. Whether it marked a turning point in US-Russia relations or merely a blip on the radar of history remains to be seen. What is certain is that the relationship between these two nuclear superpowers will continue to be a defining feature of the 21st century, a source of both hope and trepidation for a world grappling with unprecedented challenges. The path ahead is fraught with uncertainty, a tangled web of competing interests, clashing ideologies, and the ever-present potential for miscalculation. The meeting in Riyadh, for all its limitations, served as a reminder that dialogue, however difficult, remains the only viable path forward. In a world teetering on the brink of chaos, the stakes are simply too high to allow rivalry to morph into open conflict. The future, as always, remains unwritten, a canvas upon which the choices made today will leave their indelible mark.